In the heart of Atlanta, the Horizon Public Library stood as a beacon of knowledge, its glass walls reflecting the vibrant pulse of the city. Inside, Dr. Marcus Ellison sat at a wooden table. Near the biography section, his laptop open to a dense spreadsheet of encrypted data. At 38, Marcus was a man of quiet intensity, tall, with close-cropped hair and wire-rimmed glasses that framed sharp, observant eyes. His charcoal blazer was neatly folded over the chair, his sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms toned from years of disciplined training. A cup of black coffee, now cold, sat beside a stack of books on counterterrorism strategies, a cover for the real work he was doing. Marcus was no ordinary library patron. As a covert operative for the National Security Agency (NSA), he spent his days untangling digital webs of potential threats. He'd arrived in Atlanta that morning after a red-eye flight from D.C., preparing for a classified briefing at the nearby FBI field office. The library, with its free Wi-Fi and steady hum of activity, was the perfect place to blend in while he cross-referenced intelligence reports. He'd chosen a corner table, far from the main entrance, to avoid attention. Marcus was used to fading into the background. It was part of the job. The library was busy that afternoon. Students typed furiously at communal tables, retirees flipped through newspapers, and a group of teens whispered over a graphic novel. Marcus barely noticed the chatter, his focus locked on his screen. He was halfway through decoding a file when the glass doors swung open, admitting a man in a crisp police uniform. Officer Daniel Hargrove, mid-30s, with a square jaw and a practiced stride, scanned the room. His badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and his hand rested lightly on his radio. The air shifted slightly, subtle, but enough for Marcus to notice. He didn't look up, but his peripheral vision tracked Hargrove's movements. Hargrove approached the circulation desk, leaning in to speak with a librarian, a middle-aged woman with a name tag reading Clara. Their voices were low, but Marcus caught fragments. Suspicious, sitting alone, long time. Clara glanced toward Marcus's table, her expression uncertain, then shook her head slightly. Hargrove's posture stiffened, and he turned, his eyes locking onto Marcus. The operative's fingers paused over his keyboard, but he kept his face neutral, sipping his coffee as if nothing had changed. Hargrove crossed the room, his boots echoing softly on the polished floor. "Excuse me, sir," he said, stopping a few feet from Marcus's table. His tone was firm, laced with authority. "You've been here a while. Mind telling me what you're doing?" Marcus looked up slowly, his expression calm but unyielding. "Working," he said simply, gesturing to his laptop. "This is a library, isn't it?" Hargrove's brow furrowed. "We got a call about someone acting suspicious, lingering too long. You got any ID?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, his movements deliberate. "Suspicious how?" he asked, his voice steady. "I'm sitting here, using the Wi-Fi, same as everyone else." The officer's hand shifted closer to his belt. "People are saying you don't look like you belong here. Let's see some identification." Across the room, heads began to turn. A college student lowered her headphones, her eyes flicking. Between Marcus and Hargrove, an older man reading a newspaper folded it down, watching silently. Clara, behind the desk, busied herself with papers, but her glances betrayed her unease. Marcus felt the weight of their stares, the familiar sting of being singled out. He'd faced this before too many times to count, but it never got easier. "I'm not breaking any laws," Marcus said, his tone even. "I paid for my coffee. I'm using a public space." "What's the issue?" Hargrove's jaw tightened. "The issue is you're making folks uncomfortable. I'm asking you to leave." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice remained calm. "Based on what? Has someone complained about me specifically?" The officer hesitated, his confidence wavering for a split second. "Just do what I'm asking, sir. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The room was quieter now, the hum of conversation replaced by a tense silence. A young woman near the window pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over the record button. Marcus noticed but didn't react. Instead, he reached slowly into his blazer, pulling out a slim leather wallet. Hargrove's hand twitched toward his radio, but he froze as Marcus flipped the wallet open, revealing a badge. National Security Agency. Senior Field Operative, Dr. Marcus Ellison. The library seemed to hold its breath. Hargrave's eyes widened, his face paling as he processed the credentials. The badge wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a symbol of authority far beyond his own. Marcus held it steady, his gaze locked on the officers. "I'm here on official business," he said quietly. "I suggest you verify before you escalate this further." Hargrove blinked, his mouth opening, then closing. I didn't know, sir," he stammered. Stepping back, "We got a call. You didn't ask," Marcus interrupted, his voice low but firm. "You assumed." The words landed like a quiet thunderclap. The woman with the phone was recording now. Her hands steadied despite the tension. Clara's eyes darted between the two men, her expression a mix of shock and embarrassment. Hargrove stood frozen, his authority unraveling, in the face of Marcus's calm resolve. After a long moment, he muttered an apology and retreated toward the exit, his boots louder now against the silence. Marcus closed his wallet and returned to his laptop, his fingers resuming their work as if nothing had happened. But the room hadn't recovered. The student with the headphones stared, her mouth slightly open. The older man nodded slowly, as if acknowledging something unspoken. The woman with the phone stopped recording, her hands trembling as she saved the video. Marcus took a sip of his cold coffee, his mind already back on his briefing. He didn't want attention, didn't need it, but the moment had been captured, and it was about to ripple far beyond the library's walls. Leila Carter, the young woman who'd recorded the encounter, sat in her car outside the library, staring at her phone. The video was 10 minutes long, raw and unedited, capturing every word of the exchange. She'd only meant to grab a study guide from the library during her lunch break from her nursing job. But something about Hargrave's tone had made her press record. Now, she replayed the footage, pausing on Marcus's badge reveal. His unflinching composure burned into her mind. Leila wasn't a journalist, but she'd seen enough to know this wasn't just another misunderstanding. It was a moment that exposed something raw, truth too many people lived with daily. She opened her social media app, hesitated, then typed, "This happened at Horizon Library today. A man was just working, minding his business, when a cop tried to kick him out. Watch what happens when he shows his NSA badge. This is strength under pressure. Share this." She uploaded the video and hit post. Within minutes, the video gained traction. Friends shared it, then strangers. By the time Leila finished her shift at the hospital, it had 5,000 views. Comments poured in. "He didn't even raise his voice. That's power. Why didn't the cop ask questions first?" A local activist account reposted it, and by evening, it was on X, racking up thousands of shares. The hashtag ask before you assume began trending, alongside Marcus's name, though he didn't know it yet. Back at his hotel, Marcus was reviewing his briefing notes when his phone buzzed. It was his colleague, Amara Klein, a cybersecurity analyst who'd worked with him for years. "You're famous," she said without preamble. Marcus frowned. What are you talking about?" "The library. Someone recorded it. It's everywhere." He sighed, rubbing his temple. "I'm not checking social media, Amara. You don't have to. It's on the news now. CNN, MSNBC, even local stations. They're calling you the NSA operative who shut down a bad call." Marcus didn't respond right away. He'd spent his career avoiding the spotlight. Covert work demanded it. But this wasn't just about him. It was about the assumptions that followed him into every room, the weight of proving he belonged. "Let it die down," he said finally. "I've got work to do." "It's not dying down," Amara replied. "People are talking about you, like you're a hero. And that officer, he's getting roasted, across town." Officer Hargrove sat in his apartment, scrolling through X on his personal phone. The video was inescapable, his face frozen in that moment of shock as Marcus held up his badge. The comments stung, another cop jumping to conclusions. He didn't even apologize properly. Hargrove's stomach churned. He'd been following a vague tip from a nearby shop about a suspicious individual, but now he saw how flimsy it was. He hadn't asked enough questions, hadn't thought it through. He wanted to explain himself, to post a defense. But his sergeant had ordered him to stay off social media. At the Atlanta Police Department, Captain Eleanor Ruiz called Hargrove into her office. A no-nonsense veteran, Ruiz didn't mince words. "What were you thinking, Daniel?" she asked, a printout of the video still on her desk. "I got a call," Hargrove said, his voice tight. "They said someone was lingering, acting off. He was alone, focused on his laptop, and that made him a threat." Ruiz cut in. "You didn't verify. You didn't ask. Now the department's got a PR nightmare, and the mayor's breathing down my neck." Hargrove swallowed. "Am I suspended?" "Not yet," Ruiz said. "But you're on desk duty, pending a review, and you're taking mandatory bias training. This isn't just about you, it's about trust. We've lost some today." Hargrove left the office, his mind racing. He wasn't a bad cop, he told himself. He'd made a mistake. But the internet wasn't forgiving. Neither was the growing crowd outside the library, where a few protesters held signs reading "Question assumptions," and "Respect isn't earned by a badge." Meanwhile, Lila's video hit 100,000 views. News outlets picked it up, framing Marcus as a symbol of quiet strength. A pundit on a cable show called him a testament to professionalism under pressure. But Marcus wasn't watching. He was in a secure conference room, briefing FBI agents on a potential cyber threat. His voice was steady, his focus razor-sharp, but he felt the weight of the day's events. When the briefing ended, a young agent lingered. "Dr. Ellison, I saw the video," she said. "You handled that better than most could." Marcus gave a small nod. "I handled it the only way I know how," he said, "by staying focused." The agent hesitated, then added, "It's making people think. That's something." Marcus didn't reply, but her words stayed with him as he drove back to his hotel. The video wasn't just a moment, it was a spark, igniting conversations he hadn't intended to start. By the next morning, Marcus Ellison's name was a household topic. The video had surpassed 1 million views, shared across platforms with captions praising his composure and condemning Hargrove's haste. In a Chicago classroom, a teacher showed the clip to her students, sparking a debate about implicit bias. In a Seattle coffee shop, a barista recounted the story to a customer, emphasizing Marcus's calm defiance. The hashtag ask before you assume was trending nationwide, and community groups began organizing forums to discuss policing and profiling. Leila Carter was overwhelmed. Her inbox was flooded with messages, some from supporters, others from skeptics who claimed Hargrove was just doing his job. A local news station reached out for an interview, but she declined. "I'm not the story," she told a friend. "He is." Still, she couldn't stop checking the comments, moved by stories from others who'd faced similar scrutiny. One message stood out, a mother who wrote, "I showed this to my daughter. She's 15 and scared of being judged. Your video showed her what strength looks like." Marcus, meanwhile, was trying to keep his routine intact. He checked out of his hotel and headed to the airport, his mind on the next assignment. But the world wouldn't let him fade back into anonymity. At the TSA checkpoint, an agent recognized him. "You're the guy from the library," he said, shaking Marcus's hand. "Respect, man. You stayed cool." Marcus managed a polite smile. "Just doing my job," he said, moving through security. But the attention followed him. On his flight back to D.C., a passenger leaned over and whispered, "You're an inspiration." Marcus nodded, unsure how to respond. He didn't feel like an inspiration. He felt exposed. In Atlanta, the Horizon Library became a focal point. Reporters interviewed patrons, asking if they'd witnessed the incident. Clara, the librarian, gave a brief statement. "We welcome everyone here. What happened was unfortunate." The library's manager announced plans for a community dialogue on inclusion. Prompted by the incident, outside, the protests grew, though they remained peaceful, with signs now reading "See people, not stereotypes." Officer Hargrove spent the day in a training session, watching videos on de-escalation and cultural sensitivity. The instructor paused on a slide about snap judgments, and Hargrove felt the words hit too close to home. He hadn't meant to profile Marcus, but the truth was undeniable. He'd acted on assumption, not evidence. At home, he avoided his phone, knowing the online vitriol hadn't slowed. But one post caught his eye, a thread from a retired cop who wrote, "We've all made mistakes, but owning them is how we grow. This officer has a chance to learn." Hargrove didn't sleep that night. He kept replaying the moment in his head, wondering how he'd missed the signs. Marcus hadn't been agitated or defensive, just calm. Almost too calm. It was that composure that haunted him, more than the badge. In D.C., Amara met Marcus at a quiet diner near NSA headquarters. "You can't ignore this," she said, sliding her tablet across the table. It showed a news article with his photo. "People are calling you a role model." "I'm not a role model," Marcus said, pushing the tablet back. "I'm just a guy who wanted to do his job." "But you did more than that," Amara pressed. "You showed what it means to hold your ground without losing yourself." "That's not nothing." Marcus sipped his coffee, his eyes distant. "It shouldn't have to be a lesson," he said. "I shouldn't have to prove who I am to sit in a library." Amara nodded, her expression softening. "You're right. But people are listening now. That's something." The conversation lingered in Marcus's mind as he drove home. He thought about his childhood in Oakland, where he'd learned to navigate suspicion, early cops eyeing him on street corners, teachers assuming he'd fall behind. He'd clawed his way to a PhD, then to the NSA, not for fame, but for purpose. Now, the world was watching, and he wasn't sure he wanted the weight of their gaze. A week later, the story hadn't faded. The video was dissected on talk shows, analyzed in editorials, and referenced in sermons. A community center in Atlanta hosted a panel discussion where Leila Carter spoke publicly for the first time. "I recorded it because I knew it wasn't right," she said, her voice steady. But Dr. Ellison's response, "That's what people need to see." He didn't just show a badge. He showed us how to stand tall. Marcus declined interview requests, but the NSA's press office released a statement. "Dr. Ellison is a dedicated professional, serving his country. We commend his professionalism and are addressing the incident with local authorities." Behind closed doors, Marcus met with his supervisor, who offered support but urged him to stay focused. "The work doesn't stop," she said, "but you've started something bigger than you intended." In Atlanta, the police department announced reforms, including enhanced bias training and a community advisory board. Officer Hargrove wasn't fired, but he volunteered for additional training, determined to understand where he'd gone wrong. At a community forum, he spoke publicly, his voice unsteady but sincere. "I made a mistake," he said. "I didn't see Dr. Ellison for who he was. I'm learning to do better." The crowd was mixed. Some applauded his honesty, others demanded accountability. But Hargrove's words reached Marcus through a news clip Amara sent him. He watched it in his D.C. apartment, noting the officer's nervous posture. It wasn't enough to erase the incident, but it was a start. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "My son saw your video. He's 10 and wants to be a scientist like you. Thank you for showing him he can." Marcus read it twice, then saved it. He thought of his younger self, poring over books in a library, not unlike Horizon, dreaming of a future where he could make a difference. That boy hadn't needed a badge to prove his worth, but the world had demanded it. On a quiet Saturday, Marcus visited a youth center in D.C., invited by a community leader who'd seen the video. He spoke to a group of teens, not about the incident, but about resilience, focus, and the power of knowledge. "You'll face moments where people doubt you," he said. "Don't let their assumptions define you. Define yourself." The teens listened, some nodding, others taking notes. One asked, "How do you stay calm when someone's judging you?" Marcus paused, then smiled faintly. "You remember who you are, and you keep going." As he left, a girl handed him a drawing, a sketch of a badge with the words, "Strength in Silence." Marcus tucked it into his pocket, a reminder that his moment in the library had become more than a viral clip. It was a call to action, a challenge to see people for who they are, not what they seem. Back in Atlanta, Leila Carter walked into Horizon Library, now a symbol of change. She sat at Marcus's table, opened her laptop, and smiled. The world was still loud, but the ripples from that day were creating something new, a conversation that wouldn't fade, carried forward by those who'd seen a quiet scholar become an unintentional hero.